Well, it's another winning session for the ape community, folks. Both AMC, GameStop continuing their upward march. It's been a little bit of a quiet rally, right? But doing extraordinarily well all week long. Meanwhile, earnings have also been on a tear, showing no signs of slowing down. But will that be enough to keep this market moving and, of course, prevent all of the other hurdles, including still the taper tantrum on the table? I want to bring in Managing Director of Market Gauge Group, Michelle Snyder, along with the President and CEO of Strategic Wealth Partners, Mark Tepper. Mark, I looked at the notes and it says, forget about these earnings 2021. They're phenomenal, but you're kind of concerned about next year's earnings. What's going to happen?
Yeah, so look, Charles, this is a situation where one year's blowout numbers can become next year's very difficult comps, and we've seen a ton of earnings pulled forward into this year. So the earnings growth rate, not the actual number, the growth rate continues to come down. On January 1st, it was like 16%. Now it's down to 9%. And when you start to add in higher taxes and what I believe is longer than transitory inflation, which beats up margins, there is a risk that we end up coming in below the long-term trend of 6% earnings growth next year. So keep an eye on operating margins. When that peaks and rolls over, that's when you start to see some pretty violent sell-offs happen.
And Michelle, more closer on the calendar is next month, tomorrow. It's always a tough month seasonally, right? But it's even worse or harsher for investors in the first year of a presidential new president. Are you bracing for any sort of adverse action next month?
Well, I like to temper the word brace because that really means fear and anxiety, and rather use the word plan. And we're seeing signs in the market where it could actually get a little bit more tumultuous in September. Simply if we look at those inside sectors that we talk about all the time. The Russells are green today, but they're still so far from what the NASDAQ has done. Transportation is actually red, and that is a concern because what does that mean? Slow down because of variant and possible because of the consumer sentiment. People aren't buying robustly. And then, of course, retail. So if they hold up, that would be a good sign and actually be the opposite of what people anticipate. But if they can't hold up from here and they start to sell off, particularly if the yields go up a little bit, I would definitely be concerned that we can see a correction. Crash may be strong, but certainly a correction, maybe 10, 20%, looking at around the June, July lows before we see support.
Mark, what sectors are you looking at here?
So right now I'm favoring tech and healthcare. Over the next 12 months, because my time horizon is about a year, I do think some of the more cyclical industries like construction and engineering could benefit more over the immediate term. Charles, here's the thing. I mean, when growth is abundant, value stocks do well. When growth is tougher to come by, and there's no doubt growth slows over the next 12 months, you want to be in companies that are durable growers. A lot of that's in tech and healthcare.
Michelle, I saw your list, your buy list. It looks very eclectic. I hope that's the right word. You got beaten down names like IBM and Viacom. And then you got these names, these momentum names like an AMC. So, I mean, we only got a minute left, but can you go through this real quick, particularly for AMZ, because we've got an audience who kind of favors those names.
Well, I'm looking at AMC from a technical standpoint mainly, and when we were on last week, remember it went from 40 to 46 like that, and it's been consolidating since, and here we are back at around 46. So I think if we can hold here, get through 48, I see 60 pretty easily. It just always has a lot of interest. It's still a meme stock. And if we're going to see any kind of optimism with movie going, and especially as we get into the fall season and more movies will be made, then that could help fundamentally. As far as IBM, I just think that right now it's undervalued compared to many of the other AI tech type companies, and their supercomputer has been a big interest right now to the government. So I'm watching that very carefully as well, especially if it gets to 142.
Although NVIDIA got that big contract. Just you had to follow Elizabeth Warren to know that was going to happen. Fantastic, folks. That stock is on the move. Michelle, Mark, great stuff. Always appreciate it. Lauren Simonetti, she's Infoliss claiming,